Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Coventry staff chat. Welcome back to us. It's been a while since we did one of those. How are you guys doing? Tonight I have Michelle McCarthy, staff writer, and I would guess Monster Bear Mom. Like keeps us all like functioning at Monster Camp and in moving on a daily basis without us collapsing on ourselves. We need that. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to talk to her tonight. And I'm hoping that she can tell us a lot about what her experience with LARPing is. So, Michelle, why don't you say hello?
Hi everybody.
So, for you guys who don't know, who may not see Michelle a lot of us staffers are usually just running out, and you see our faces all the time as monsters and everything like that. But you know, Michelle doesn't exactly do that all the time. She's kind of the glue that's keeping us all kind of doing that on the up and up, and we're also have to listen to her when we cross our schedule, which happens not often, but
what you're trying to say is that I yell at them in Monster Camp.
it's important. It's very important. Events get crazy, and I think Michelle, I think you've done so much more than just that in your LARP life. I mean, easily. I mean, that just comes naturally to you, to keeping everybody moving, but. You got like 20 years on, of experience here, and you've written for other games. I mean, you've played games that may not even be around anymore. You've played in a style of rules that are, were awesome and, probably formative in your LARP experience. Do you want to tell me a little bit about what your first kind of LARP experiences were? How you got into the hobby?
Oh my goodness. My first LARP experience was actually when I was 18, going on 19, and it was a game that had 4 NPCs. Years ago.
Where? The classics are necessary, if you ask me. Yeah.
Moving the light up and down, and there were dragons in this game. So none of us wanted to leave the cabin, despite the fact that we all knew that we had one of the 4 staff members, one of the 4 people running the game. That was it. 4 NPCs was in the cabin with us. So there were only 3 of them out there. But we were terrified to leave the cabin because there was a dragon looking around in the woods outside. There was a giant dragon eye going, hey, so we were a little worried about, oh good, they can hear me now. We were a little worried about
This is
the
coming
cabin.
great.
So that was really my first experience. And that, I mean, I was a lot younger then, and I was young and spry, and I would sleep with my incredibly, I mean, that so long ago that the weapons were literally like this big around. They were very big, incredibly padded weapons.
What?
Yes. They were really, really big weapons. And this was a very long time ago. And I would sleep with my shield right above my head up here and my sword down beside me on the bed so that I could just roll out of bed if I needed to fight something. And we had a 10 count for locks. So things could, like, you had to do a 10 count to open or shut your door if it was locked. And I remember I was laying in bed one morning, and my friend Judy, who had gotten me into the LARPing, was sitting on the cot across the room, and she was trying to get me to get up, and I was young and I was being super lazy. I wanted to stay in bed. I was super tired. We had been up really late the night before, and I kept saying over and over, nothing can get in, nothing can get in, because we had never faced anything in the game that could break through our lock.
Oh,
and
boy.
then quite suddenly from next door, in the cabin next door, we heard the 30 damage call that broke the lock for the door next door. And it was the most horrifying thing, because we literally, both of us were the only, there was 2 PCs in town, and it was me and her. Everyone else had gone out looking for alchemical stuff that morning in a big group together, because it was dangerous, and we were in our cabin, so we were theoretically safe. And there was an NPC merchant in the cabin next door who we listened to get murdered by this monster, but we couldn't.
Like an early experience, right? Like,
so it was a little terrifying, but that's how I got involved. And I think that dragon eye really was the thing for me. It's like the thing I'm always chasing
that
now.
is literally, like, I was, as you're saying that, I was like, okay, so with a wireless something, I may be able to replicate that. Okay, but I could actually use...
Matt's gonna spend the rest of his life trying to scare me with dragon eyes in the woods.
well, we actually, fun fact, we've actually kind of, I think it slipped my mind for a second, but we actually did something where we had like a moving light thing at one of our early, very first Coventry event, where we revealed your one of your NPCs. I'm pretty sure it might have been an Ashland event. I don't remember. But
I think it was an Ashland event.
Yeah,
I think it was Ashland.
And the only thing we were lacking there was something bright enough, right? But we were like, we had like someone in, like, it was dark, and we had someone who was like all blacked out, and we had them holding the little thing, and you really couldn't see because it's coming from the front, and you're looking at it this way as a player, and so you couldn't see the guy like moving it, and it was awesome. It was a really cool experience. Like, the NPC was like, yeah, I don't need you to fight, man. I need you to wave a light around. Trust me.
Right.
It might have been me, actually. And I think at some point, actually, I think it was me. And I think at some point I got low on you. I did like this upshot too, so that people could like see all the like the ruffles on the white dress or whatever.
That was the fight with the Queen of the Fae and Ashland.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That is absolutely it. That was definitely.
But that's
Ashland.
it. And that was
Man,
that was a really long time
like
ago. And I kind of got hooked. There's been a few times here and there where I've been sort of LARPed out, I guess I'd say, and I kind of stepped away from it for a little while, but it never really lasted long, and I'm usually right back in the thick of things before too long. So
yeah, Jake McCarthy LFE confirms that it was in fact me. Yes, he's right. Yeah, so
it was.
And that was I think it was like my second event actually ever being on a staff with you guys ever. Like, because that was maybe second, maybe third event ever, and that's how I started running with you guys. That was amazing.
That was our bonding moment.
Yes, it was. It was awesome, and we were so stressed out about it, and it came out so cool.
It did. It looked really, really neat. I remember being really stressed about it, and also I was incredibly cold because I like to do weird things with my costumes regardless of what kind of weather I might be wearing them in. So yeah, there was that.
Yeah. Oh man, costumes. We can get into that in a little while.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. But I want to know more about what other, so you kind of you LARPed early. You had this awesome experience. Did you ever see that out of the games afterwards?
That game had petered out at some point, and it was very small, and it didn't
Small
last very
long.
And whenever it kind of ended, we moved back over to Nero, which was my first experience with Nero. But the people that got me into playing actually played Nero before that.
Gotcha.
So I moved over into Nero. I played Ravenholtz for years.
Cool.
back whenever it was at the site in Ware. Many times. So I'm actually surprised that my ankles are still intact with all the
There's a lot of stories
potholes
around the community about that hill, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the
Or
Spider
something to that
Bowl
effect.
and, you know, all those places that
Yeah.
were super fun for somebody who can't see in the dark. And,
Yeah.
but yeah, a grand time. I remember one of my very first Nero events playing a character named Skylark, who I somehow by accident got trapped in.
Trapped, you say?
It was so there was a big field at Ware, and
Mm-hmm.
around the field was a bunch of trees.
Mm-hmm.
And just at the very back, like if you were standing at the main building at the front of the field
Yeah.
and looking straight across the field, there was a line of trees, and inside that line of trees was a hill that went up. And I had a habit, I still have this habit, but I had a habit back then of wandering off and sitting down and picking flowers or looking at the moon, or, you know, whatever happened to be catching my fancy at the time. And I went and sat down right inside the tree line with my back against the hill. And suddenly a wave battle broke out, and the NPCs were literally a foot and a half away from me, spawning over the hill. And I sat there for an hour and a half. No one ever saw me. I was terrified to say anything because I was afraid that they would see me. So I just sat there super quiet with my brown cloak wrapped around me, desperately hoping that no one caught me sitting there in the dark, all by myself, while this field battle respawned literally a foot and a half away from me. So it was interesting. It was fun. I didn't get to actually enjoy that field battle because I was just terrified the entire time. But I'm sure it was very fun. It took a long time. So
We'll talk about being in the thick of it. I mean, like, you know, there's very. I can't imagine there's a lot of dramatic experiences you can have LARPing, but like being right there and next to like these waves of monsters coming at people and
yeah,
like
I
surviving
have
is a pro.
a lot of my LARPing memories. I have a lot of great memories. I really do. You know, I'm sure people that know me have heard me complain about the not great memories a lot, but I do have a lot of really wonderful memories of LARPing. I have some that were created because of plot lines that were happening. I have some that were created because friends were nearby and they made me laugh because of I wore a bustle dress to fifth gate, and at one point decided that I was going to sit in an Adirondack chair, which if you're ever wearing a bustle dress and need to sit in an Adirondack chair, the way to do it is to just wiggle a little. That's that's how you get the
Nice.
bustle.
Is that the secret?
And I made Beth Fallon laugh.
That's excellent.
She
That's
was
awesome.
like, that may have been the cutest thing I've ever seen. So, you know, so, but just little tiny moments like that. You know, Dave is glad that I told him how to sit in a bustle dress, so I'm
Cool.
glad to hear that too.
Very good, very good.
But yeah, you know, I spent my first 3-4 events playing Mad One, adamantly and loudly refusing to believe that the Shetra existed, for example, until one night whenever I was poking around outside the front lines of a battle and it came out of the woods. Yeah. So oh, they do exist, and jumping back behind the line, you know. So I like to have fun with it. I really love those moments where something just catches me.
Sounds like
you
had a lot of agency in how your character was allowed to perceive the world. There wasn't a lot of limits on to, you know, you can't believe this.
I don't let people put limits on me for that. I mean, you know,
obviously. Do that in your writing too? Do you open up those limits for, you know, do you like let those limits out when you're trying to create stuff and content for Coventry, or even
I try not to. I try not to limit other people. I want to see what people will do with something that I've written. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say this, and I'm probably not. There's probably other people that do this as well, but I'm basically the queen of, so I'm going to do this thing, and at some point I'm hoping that it ends up in X marks the spot place, but probably we're going to be on a different continent and sometimes a different universe by the time we're done, because sometimes the players will throw something at me that just, you know, ignites a spark, and then I want to move. I want to do that. I want to shift directions completely, because what I had was kind of cool, but not like that, you know.
Right.
And so I really, and I want people to have fun with it. So I know if somebody comes up with a plan that I did not think of, I remember the very first plot line that I ever ran. I figured there would be three possible outcomes. So this was the plot line, and these were the three things I thought could possibly happen.
Right.
And of course, it was like a fourth thing that I had never even imagined they might go that direction with it. And then it was supposed to be a 1 weekend plot line, and it ended up being like a 3-year plot line because the players went a different direction with it.
I love those moments.
Yeah, so it's fun, I think, to run for, other brains than my own.
So would you agree in the sense that, the experiences you had as a player, they were, you were seeking your own experience when you were going to do this thing that you hadn't done before, and it sounds like you drew a lot of positives out of that, and it sounds like they like bringing that into your writing. Do you have any moments where you got to really bring one of those moments you might have experienced for another person? Maybe with like a relationship with another player as an NPC.
Do you mean, did I make one of those moments for someone else, or do I think I did?
Yeah, or do you try? I mean, obviously,
I did.
we're always trying to create stuff to create those moments. I'm curious as to being on the other end, what's a memorable thing you created for someone?
So once upon a time, a certain lady was playing an elf, and I had never seen her before, and we were running, and I came in and I said, there's a person out there who's I think it was at Avondale, I want to say. We were running Avondale, and I came in and I said, there's this girl I've never seen before. She's playing an elf. Does anybody know who she is? And they were like, no. And I'm like, she's pretty cool. She's totally in game. Her costume is really, really awesome. I said, what's her background? Let's run something for her. Let's get her involved, because she's there and she's really involved, but she seems to be involved in all the other things, not anything that has to do with her. And they were like, oh, she doesn't have a background. She's only been playing. I mean, she had a basic background, but not anything super in depth that we could play with. And she had been playing for just a couple of games, I think, at that point. And so I went out in Miro, where you can wear a white headband and not exist. I snuck up behind her. I didn't know her at all. I snuck up behind her and I just leaned forward and whispered into her ear over her shoulder, "You hear a strange voice in your head asking you where you're from." And that was it. It was just this weird, like, creepy, like I was creeping on her. And then we became best friends for years and years and years.
Because that olive branch out, it sounds like,
Yeah, and it was fun, and it sent her, character spinning in a really cool direction. I think she eventually did some really neat stuff with, and it was just this one random, made up off the top of my head sentence, and just because I wanted to get her involved because I thought she was super cool, and so that's what happened. So I would like to think, I hope that was one of those moments for her.
Sounds like it. That's amazing. I mean, it's one of those things where it's very unique to people to. It's a very kind thing when you can, they might be involved in something, and you just go out on the limb and you just try something. I don't know what, who knows what you were being guided by at that moment, but at that moment you were just a staffer trying to make a player have a good time.
Exactly.
And that's all we can ever strive to do, and that comes from, having other staffers when you were, coming up too, I'm sure, giving you good experiences like that as well. I know that those inform my things too. And it inspires my writing, which makes me wonder what, you mentioned before you had been raised on classics and you've been raised on stories like that. And you mentioned Paradise Lost, which is amazing epic. That's
a hard read.
Super dense. Super dense.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. I haven't read it myself personally, but I understand the fantasy of it, and I understand the narrative of it too. And I wonder, when you're reading stories like that, is there anything you like pull from those kinds of things that you morph into, a module experience or a character, like an NPC that you might have at Coventry?
I might, and I just don't. I maybe don't realize that I do it. I think once I got into LARPing, I mean, it was like a floodgate opened. So as soon
Okay.
as I got into LARPing, I started reading every single
Yeah, it
fantasy
does that to
novel I
you.
could get my hands on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I read the Belgariad, David Eddings,
I'm listening to that right now, book
and
two.
yeah, so that was actually the first fantasy novel I read. I mean, so and I really just sort of dove into it. And of course now over the years I couldn't even list all of the things that I've read, but um until that point in time I just hadn't, it wasn't my thing. It wasn't something that I really got into at any point. I just didn't have any reason to, I think.
Okay, that makes
But
sense.
once I started LARPing, that was it. So I suspect that a lot of, for me, I think a lot of my ideas tend to come from various different kinds of fairy tales. I will twist them and turn them upside down and shake them for a little while and then put them on their ear and call that upright. So,
Awesome. Well, I think one of the I mean one of the most creative ideas I think that you've written so far in Coventry, and we put this in a faction poll last week, was the Shadewalkers. And I asked that because there are these really cool entities in the Coventry universe, and I wonder like what kinds of things inspired you to like make those a creature. What drove you to make that a thing, and how do they function in the world? I don't want to say too much because the faction poll's over now, and there will be other faction polls, and the Shadewalkers might be
true.
there again.
Uh,
you
I could
know.
answer this question and take myself right out of the running for the next vote.
Well, yeah, no, we don't
um,
want to do that. Right. But I mean, all
I
good. I
came
mean,
up with
save
the
the best for last,
Shadewalkers.
if anything, right?
Yeah. I came up with the Shadewalkers because, again, it's yet another twist on fairy tales in general. But I came up with the Shadewalkers, and there's actually a really cool story. I'm gonna toot my own horn. There's a really
Do
cool
it.
story about where they came from, just in case you want to vote for me next time.
Oh, now she's bribing you, guys. Chat. She's bribing you.
um,
She's bribing you
but
with
there's this
with
really
these
really
things.
great story about why the Council of Shadewalkers came into existence, and I'm
Ooh,
actually uh, I can't wait for sort of the entirety of that story to
oh, I
come
certainly
out, because I
can't.
think people are really
I
going
can't
to
wait
enjoy
either.
it quite a bit. It has a lot to do with love and loss, which I think is a big thing. In a lot of things I write, it's a lot about epic loves and dramatic losses, and um, sort of the way those things combine. And so it does have this really sweet love story involved, that, because of how it happened, created this entire council that lasted for thousands and thousands of years, that are set to fight against the dangers of the shade. So
Dangers of the Shade. If that was gonna
dangers
be
of the
like, if I was
shade.
making a trailer and like I cut to black, it'd be like the dangers in the shade, and that would be it. That'd be the end of the trailer
And then
right
there'd be
there.
spooky music,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. There's always spooky music,
We'll have to work on that.
and absolutely 100%. I have the I enjoy playing one of those Shadewalkers that we played with in the first couple events. And being in those kinds of roles, it's we got into some interesting costuming for that. We didn't. I think under of course your guidance, because I mean, I think you think through these characters right down to the thread that's on their back. Okay, you know.
Sometimes I think that the costuming is a really important part of who a character
Oh
is.
yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I definitely agree with you. But like even
We had a
like
long
costuming as far as
conversation
like
about that
prosthetics
earlier
too.
today,
Yeah.
actually. But yeah, it's very important, I think, and that plays into my characters quite a bit. I try to sort of, sometimes I go a little overboard, but I do try to incorporate sort of the things that I feel like my character, whether it's a PC or an NPC, that makes them who they are. It makes them their certain individual spark of whatever,
Right. Absolutely. As you know, those creatures too, the Shadewalkers. I mean, we had some pretty you know pretty beefy horns, and like we definitely looked like we weren't there. Like when we were there, but like we were out of place, right? And there's a contrast there, and that kind of stuff, right? Everyone's dressed a certain way, and you have like the races of the world, and then here's the Shadewalker, and it's just like, oh, I have these horns coming out of my head, like not like.
Well, I mean, so you are
ones, but, like,
you are a
ones.
race. You're whatever. Like my Shadewalker is just she's here laugh. It's so, but there is an otherworldliness about them. They spend a lot of time in and out of the shade, and that can change a person. So
yeah, that otherworldliness too. It's in a big universe, like in a big world that I think so many people are experiencing. I mean, we've been in this world for 20 months now. It's just in our brain constantly every single day. I mean, you more than I think anyone else. I mean, Jake literally is your husband.
Yeah, I live in Coventry, even in my own house. It's okay though. Yeah. Coventry is nice, so
yeah, it's awesome. And I guess I really find a lot of interest in the kinds of things that inspire us to create the kind of characters and the kind of stories we have, and that in expressing those kinds of things too. In a LARP, I mean, costuming is a huge load bearing thing for all of that too. So like, but you have from big bustling dresses to horns, or like hood coverings to like fit a creature's weird form or whatever it might be. I think that stuff it just sells it every single time. I mean,
and that was actually a big struggle for me, which in the end, oddly enough, was just answered by a last minute fine, I'll just wear this sort of situation. But I kind of came out as Siobhan, my Shadewalker, sort of unexpectedly. And I kind of had a general idea that I wanted her to wear, browns and greens. I wanted her to be very basic and very simple. And what I ended up in was a very basic white a peasant blouse and a pair of brown pants and a green sort of bolero jacket. And I loved that, like, it just clicked for me. I'm really glad that we were able to pull that together, because it just clicked that she's not really, that's what she does is try to keep the world safe from the shade. And so she doesn't really have a lot of time for fancy dresses and special doublets and things like that. So it was really, I think for me, that worked really, really well, because it was nice and simple, but exactly it screams Siobhan.
Yeah sounds good. We actually have a question in chat in regards to the greater world on Coventry. Life of a Nerd's asking you, what's your favorite god in the world of Coventry? No, you have to choose one.
Do you see my eyes cut that way? Like, oh, is he looking? So I actually, I am not allowed to say who my favorite god is out loud. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. I didn't realize that that might have been something you wanted to keep on the wraps.
No, it's not that I want to keep it under wraps so much as it's something that is coming soon, and I don't want to ruin the surprise, but at the moment is my favorite god. And I hope that he becomes a favorite of someone else maybe as well, but I hope he's at least enjoyed when it happens. So.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I have my favorite. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a favorite of mine, but I mean, like, I have the one that I work with all the time. Do you find yourself gravitating in those kinds of stories to one way or the other? Depending on.
I actually purposely try to get involved with as many players as I can. I try to, flit around a little bit, and and I certainly have plot lines that certain people get attached to, and so those are the people that sort of deal with it on a regular basis. But in general, I try to spread the love out as much as I can, so not just constantly targeting one player over another or anything like that. I always like trying to get people involved. So
right. Do you have a favorite so was the Nate Prusi wrote this really excellent queen, the Queen of Calderon, that you stole the hearts of an entire event with in the span of like 6 hours.
I don't even know if
about that experience as far as like favorite. I mean, that's my favorite NPC I've seen you in Coventry. I don't know if that was one of your favorites. Is that
I by far, she was so much fun.
Oh my goodness.
And she was fun, and obviously it was also very sad, but she was a lot of fun. And I can't thank Nate enough for giving me an excuse to wear that brown dress, because I made it, and it had just sat and waited for me to wear it somewhere. So it was nice. And the Queen of Calderon was she was very upbeat. She wanted the world to be a beautiful place. She wanted everything to be,
she had all the hopes and dreams
and lovely and rainbows and sunshine. And she knew that there was work to be done, but while she was away from Calderon on Coventry, she didn't have to focus on work. She wasn't there for work. She was there to relax and have sort of a vacation, a mini vacation from her duties in court. Mm-hmm. And so when she came out, she was very excited to make her own plate at breakfast, for example.
Instead of things. Wow.
Yes, so little things like that she was very excited to do, and very excited to meet people. And I met quite a few people that were super kind and let me be a queen on vacation that didn't really understand the full evilness of the world around her, and just wanted it to be this beautiful, lovely, wonderful place that nothing bad happened in. And so for a little bit of time that morning, I got to hang out with people and just learn things about Coventry and about life outside of a palace. So it was a lot of fun. It was incredibly fun for me.
It was a heck of an event. I mean, it was so much. It was one of my highlights, because I remember waking up and being like 6 hours to steal the hearts, because I don't know if did you know that she was gonna die at the end of the event?
Yes, I was aware. I knew from the beginning.
That's oh my goodness, I imagine, like, I can only imagine what that feels like. It's like, you're gonna
I knew
it's like, oh man, these players, I'm gonna break all their hearts.
Yeah, and I knew I had to make it. I knew I was dying that day, and I knew I had to make it worth the experience for them. So I really tried to put as much of my my everything into it, so that they would like her a lot and not want to see her dead and want to know what happened afterwards. Like, that was my goal, to make sure that when she died, they weren't like, that person that we met this morning died, so whoops. Right. So it was nice. It was nice to know that I had a couple of people who cried some tears for me. That was kind of neat.
There were tears. I think that's an understatement. I mean, maybe it's an
I heard
for me, but like I know there were some tears, and Nate played the king, right? And that was also like that preceded the queen. And so I remember vaguely, like, there was a player that actually had to tell you that the king had died.
Yes.
Was it a new player?
Yes.
Did you ever know them or seen them before?
I'm so terrible with names. I'm not going to be able to remember.
No, it's okay. I just can only. I just wonder if, if it was a new player, my imagination goes like, wow, you just had to tell someone that.
I can picture his face in my mind right now, but I'm terrible with names. No, but it was Joe Runnels. There you go. Somebody helped me out. Thank goodness. Oh. He had to tell me, and he was I remember everything they were saying around me, and it was very like they, you know, they were being very vague, so I didn't have to like react like, what are you talking about, you know, like, but they were being very vague. But at one point in time someone said she doesn't know.
Right.
And Joseph just kind of went so he ended up having to tell me, and then I started crying. And later he was just like, how I don't even understand how you did that.
Yeah.
So
No,
I think I was
something.
lost in the moment, and I don't really know how I did it either, to be honest. But
yeah. Oh man, Michelle, I still I'm gonna remember that for a long time. Talk about creating memories like right out of the gate, you know.
yeah, if I only get to play one day and you have to remember me, I'm gonna make sure that you remember
now,
me.
You didn't make a whole dress just for that one thing, right? Was that a dress you just, you know, casually just keep on the shelf for making players cry?
It's a dress that I just happened to have. I think I started creating it for something in Ashland before that ended, and it just went. I left it on my dress form. Her name is Bess. I left it on Bess for a while,
Nice.
and just every once. I actually took a picture of it, and then that was it. I never had any use for it. And then Nate asked about this character for Caldelon, and I was like, I have this thing, would it work? And he was like, oh yeah, that's fine. So I got to wear it.
You guys, you guys dressed the nines. Don't shortchange yourself. You guys were true the nines. Nate had a crown, a whole doublet. I mean,
oh yeah.
You know, he looked sharp. He had the chainmail thing going on. I mean, it was pretty impressive.
And I was very proud of my dress. It was the first time that I wore it, and it worked exactly the way it was supposed to. I was so happy with it. It had about 8 yards of fabric in the skirt, and so I was really concerned about it sort of staying out and not wrapping around my legs. And what I did with it worked really, really well, and it stayed out where it was supposed to, so I could walk in it super comfortably. It was great. I was really
that
really
the same dress where you had like you could pull the straps up to like to lift the train up a little bit so you had more movement on your feet, or was that a dress that we were conspiring on for something else later?
that may be something we were conspiring on.
Because by the way, a dress that basically turns into shorts is pretty awesome.
But yeah, so yeah, it was great. I was happy to have an excuse to wear it, and I was really happy to play that character. It was a lot of fun. It was just a very lovely morning with, you know, interaction with the players, which, you know, as you said earlier, I don't really if I'm out there, it's for a very, very specific reason.
Do you prefer it that way? Do you like being that glue in the background, or do you want to be out there like swinging plumbing supplies at people? You know,
I think my fighting days are long behind me.
Man, my fighting days are long behind me. Okay, like I can't. All right, it's exhausting. I haven't done.
I think it might be a while before I actually swing a sword again. But I enjoy being out and about. My big thing these days is really just the scene, just role playing with people and creating this depth of emotion. That's where my bag is, if you will. I don't, not really a big warmonger kind of go out and fight all the time. It's tiring. It's not something that I enjoy doing. And honestly, I'm older now and a little slow. So I didn't practice long enough or hard enough in the last decade, let's say. So
yeah, I was gonna ask if you really like to, you know, when you create. I know you gotta create NPCs and monsters when you have to, you know. And I was wondering, like, if you know, do you find yourself gravitating towards like, you know, throwing spell packets at things and that kind of stuff, or, you know, doing really dramatic looking rituals, yeah, which aren't very demanding one way or the other, but can look super cool and.
Rituals definitely a thing. I know you collaborated with me a lot in the Ashland stuff that I got involved in fighting wise. That was all very theatrical fighting. None of it was actual the LARP fighting.
Right. Yeah. Oh my! Yeah. I forgot that was a choreographed kind of thing we did.
Very much so.
Wow.
Yeah.
We do great things.
Most people will tell you that I can't.
We make a great team.
Exactly. Most people will tell you I can't hit the broadside of a barn. So.
Oh no! No. See, you're just saying that because like I'm gonna turn my back one day, and then also I'm gonna get belted with 3 packets down the spine.
Right, just 14 packets right down your spine.
Yeah, she's trying to make you think she can't throw a packet, but she will bullseye you. Okay.
Only when I'm trying not to.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So.
That's excellent. So do you have any? So we have the Shadewalkers as one of the another. Is this faction you've written? Is there anything else you're kind of excited about writing about right now? Any themes you're kind of playing around, like outside of? You said you played a lot in Love and Loss. Are there any other stories you got that you're looking to explore that theme in at all?
Yes. Yes, and I'm gonna switch into super vague shell mode here because I can't really talk about it too in depth.
Yeah, of course.
But I have sort of the main plot line that I am writing, the main story that I wrote is a very long arc. Mm-hmm. It's probably going to be start to finish for the game.
Excellent. Wow.
It's got a huge amount to do. It weaves in and out of a lot of the other plot lines that are happening around the world. And it is quite possibly the most epic thing I have ever written.
Nice. That's what I'm looking to hear. That's what I'm looking to get out of you there. It's like, this is the thing that
I'm looking forward to it. I hope other people think it's as epic as I do. Yeah. So,
and that's going to come in the form of I'm sure it's going to come in the form of excellent costuming. I mean, of course we can't talk about the background too much, but obviously I know, I know it's behind the curtain a little bit here, and showing what those things are going to, showing what that world is going to look like when we get there is going to be pretty excellent. And I think you're going to,
the depth and the breadth of Coventry has always just awed me right from the very beginning. I love the way the staff came together and wrote this world in such an interweaving way that included sort of everyone on staff, and people just work together to, fit this part that they're writing in with that part that you're writing, this part that Jake's writing, or this part that I'm writing. Mm-hmm. So I loved the collaboration for just creating the world of Coventry. So I'm looking forward to the aha moments over the next couple of years as we roll out the fate of everyone's lives.
Has a piece of like a fabric ever? I imagine this answer is gonna. But has a piece of fabric ever inspired you to like make a character, like just be like, oh, this belongs on something that looks like or needs to be like this?
Yes, many times. In fact,
what about your PC playing characters? How do they affect? How do those choices affect when you play any game?
It's incredible actually. So. The very, very first time that it happened, my second Nero character, Risa was actually my second Nero character. I started playing her in 1998.
Whoa. That's awesome.
And
wow. That's like a huge LARP heyday.
It was a long time, and I stopped playing her 4 years ago maybe. So I played her for a long time. Risa, of any character I've ever played, Risa is really another part of me. And I knew the race that Risa was going to be. I knew she was going to be that culture. I kind of knew the basics of who she was going to be as far as like on paper. I knew what the stats were, but Risa didn't really come into being until I found this crocheted purple like crossbody bag. Mm-hmm. And as soon as it sounds very strange, but as soon as I found it, and it was in a thrift store, I think it cost $3 or something.
Nice.
It had a zipper in it.
Nice.
It wasn't,
Nice.
Yeah, but it was this weird purple crocheted crossbody bag. And the minute I had my hands on it, suddenly she started taking shape. And, this is something that, I talk about quite a bit whenever, we're discussing costuming or characters and how you come at them. For me, it's almost always just this like a kernel of an idea. I have this like kernel of an idea in my head of what I want, but there's no words attached to it. It's just like a sort of a tiny flash of an image. And then there's a lot of young people on here. I was not 6 or 4. So, I have this tiny kernel in my head, and then it takes a while sometimes for me to find that next piece that starts building that character to be a fully fledged, member of the world that they're in. And I am guilty of playing characters that were not fully invested, that I wasn't fully invested in, and just playing them to pass the time. I was fully invested in Risa, to the point where I almost had to not go to an event because I couldn't find some of her belongings. And when if I don't have her belongings, I can't play her. Yeah, so it was rough. That luckily Jake found my things right before the event. So,
did you
same
have a particular
thing
piece for the Queen of Calderon that might have brought you there to that place where you needed her to be?
It didn't. So the Queen of Calderon, so she wasn't really my creation, right? She was Nate's.
Right.
So
right, but I imagine you made some choices to make that yours.
I think so. Most of that was I spent a lot of time just trying to remember what he had written so that I wouldn't mess up something that he was doing.
I see.
And I was really nervous about it. I'm always nervous about playing a character that someone else has written for me to play, because I feel like I will let them down if I mess something up. So I'm always really careful about that. But for me, she was... I was fully dressed and halfway to the tavern from Monster Camp before I really settled on a personality trait for her that helped me sort of build her as I was walking. So,
I mean, I'm sure putting that dress on too probably put you in it a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, that dress was hot. There was a lot of fabric in it. So
definitely. It was really cool though. So you played Risa, and you wouldn't even go to an event if you were missing a piece, huh?
Yeah, I couldn't imagine playing Risa if I didn't have very certain things that she always had. Her crossbody bag, the scarves that everything that I had on had a story behind it. Everything. The scarves that she wore tied to her belt had stories from her childhood attached to each of them, that I could literally hold up and quote to you. She had her things. I had this little tiny container that had 2 copper in it, so that I could throw my 2 copper in when someone needed an opinion or didn't need an opinion sometimes. So, right. And it was just all part of who she was.
Right. Which, I mean, and she's part of who you are as well. I think so too. I mean, I certainly
she's
have
a big part of me.
Lemiro,
definitely.
Lemiro. As much as he was very different than who I am as a person, it was, that investiture is super, super special. It's something I'd love for, new players and players that, continue to LARP early in their lives to, like, really understand that you can definitely go there. It's really cool when you can go there and do those kinds of things.
And I'm looking forward to a little shout out to Fealty. I'm looking forward to Fealty at the end of the year.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Do you want to talk about your Fealty character at all?
Oh, my Fealty character is going to be so much fun.
Please tell me some more.
She is like the dark and sort of dangerous side of Risa.
Oh, okay.
So, in fact, my character's name is Asir, which is Risa backwards.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So she's going to be fun, and she has a wardrobe in the making, quite a few bits and pieces that belong to her so far. I don't know how I'm going to get it all to the events. So
right. Well, I'm excited. I mean, we're playing on the same team. I'm excited for that a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
It's there's been games in the past where I've had to for a single event had to play like an alternate version of that character, right? So I part of me is super intrigued at the idea of having an archetype and then inverting it for a game, and then of course, and of course normalizing it, to the universe, right? You can't just like try and
right.
square block.
And I think Fealty was just built to be like it was just easy to slide the dark side of Risa into this game. So I'm actually pretty excited about it. I'm a little nervous about it too. I mean, of course, any idea I have could, backfire horribly and not go the way I thought it would. But I think we have a really cool. Yeah, exactly. We have a really cool group, and I have a really good background, and I'm pretty excited about it overall. So I think it's going to be great.
You said background. That reminds me. I mean, it doesn't remind me as much as I think it's a huge integral part is probably what your LARP experience has been. It sounds, and you have a lot. You just recently started streaming sewing, and you have this an amazing repertoire of seamstressing skills that you've brought to life in your characters and in your NPCs, and even just in picking things that you want to do. And can you tell me about that experience so far? Like, what kind of, you started, you're sewing this stuff. I think there's a couple of people in chat who you're actually making some commissions for. What's fun about that? Like, tell me about it. Tell me about what's great.
I think it's sometimes hard for people that don't feel this way about a hobby to understand. But for me, I love everything about it. I've been sewing since I was like knee high to a grasshopper. And if anybody would like proof of that, I have a picture. Like, no joke.
We just look at her costumes, and that's proof enough, right?
Barbie clothes. I think it was Barbie clothes back then. But I had a little teeny tiny sewing machine. It was yay big, and it went really, really slow. It never went any faster than this, so I couldn't hurt myself, But it sewed, and I learned how to sew Barbie clothes. My grandmother taught me how to lay the Barbie doll down and trace around it and add the extra bits that you needed. And that was, my first experiences in sewing things. And, I think I hit my teenage years, and I went through that teenage phase, something my grandmother did, and so I stopped doing it for a little while, and then I got into LARPing. And I'm not ashamed to admit that my mom made my first LARPing costumes because I was still not ready to get into sewing again. And then at some point I thought, I'll give it a try. And I started sewing, and I realized that I remembered a lot of things that I didn't think I remembered. And then I sewed for a couple of years, straight through my 20s. And I think I was in my early 30s before I finally realized that I was actually getting really good at it. And then I just started challenging myself. Then it was just about, can I do this? How do I do I know how to do this? I bet if I don't, I can figure it out. And so then it became like this all-encompassing hobby for me. And I love, you'll hear me say all the time, I sew Victorian dresses. That's what I love to sew. But it's not just about Victorian dresses, although I have a dangerous addiction to making petticoats for some reason. But I love just having a little challenge,
Is that love for petticoats? Why you have the channel called Pretty Petticoats? is that what that's
Pretty Petticoats sewing? Yes.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah, and if you want, join me over there. I live stream on occasion, and I'm going to have some videos just to teach people how to do some things that I think are easy and things that you can do on your own that would make your life easier for LARPing. Really, sewing your own belt flags, for example. Even if you don't have a machine, So there's that's happening, and I'm really excited about it. No one who knows me now would realize this, but whenever I was in high school, I was the most shy person in the universe. I was always with my books like right up against my chest and my head down, and I just walked around, and I was really, really quite shy. And I think LARPing beat that out of me. So now
It does
I'm not
that.
anymore.
It's done that. Yeah.
But I think I'm coming into my own at this point. I think I've finally gotten to a place in my life where, like I said, I realize that I'm actually pretty good at this, and it's a thing that I do well, and it's something that I really love to do. I can sit and make bias tape for hours, and it sounds like the most boring thing to some people. Some people hate doing it and would rather just buy it. I'm happy to make it because it's soothing. I will iron 12 yards of fabric just because I can. Like I love to do that. It's something that I really enjoy. In the last year or two, I think I've finally gotten to a place where except for all the needle holes in my fingers, I'm starting to not hate hand sewing as much, which is kind of nice. So high five to necrofancy. Yeah, bias tape satisfaction is important. It's nice to have tape that matches what you're working on instead of something that kind of matches what you're working on. And so, I've discovered just these little things over the years that I really enjoy doing. And every once in a while I just try something new, and that might be the new thing that I really enjoy doing, something that and I'm always pushing myself. Right now I'm working on I'm telling secrets. I'm working on a vest for my character Asir in Fealty, and it is not only is it something that I am making the pattern myself from scratch. I draped it on my dress form and I made the pattern from scratch. But when it's all said and done, it's also going to be hand embroidered because I can. So yeah, I like to sort of push the limits every once in a while on the things that I do.
That's awesome, and that's I like how I love I went to school for theater, and I love how design and how costuming and how it brings things to life so much, and what it means for expressing for people, and it's certainly something that I continue to get deeper and deeper in. Like I've never had any talent in sewing ever, right? But I'll sit here and ramble on about random concepts as to why a pattern has to look a certain way, or like, and the people, and then but then to actually go and make it is incredibly frustrating for me. I can't move fast enough, and it's really tough. So I admire that you're able to bring those kinds of tools to people, because that's, I think there's a lot of people out there that's the case. We can imagine things and draw things and paint things, and
I can't sew them. And on the flip side, if it makes any of you feel better, I can't draw to save my life. So if I want to,
that's what teams are for, right?
Yeah, I have to. I'm actually. This is something I'm struggling with right now. Is that I want to be able to make project cards so that I can, like I want to send a project card to Dan. But I don't want him to see my drawing disability. So I actually considered making like a flat, just a 2-dimensional version of the costume about yay big, just so out of the fabric, so he could see the fabric and what it looks like without me having to draw anything. So
right. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we're creeping up on an hour here. Look at that. I mean, time flew.
We are.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Time is not enough of it.
No, never.
Well, it can only be in the hot seat for so long, I imagine.
I'm glad that I got to chat with you tonight, and I'm
me too.
glad
I'd like to part with a last question.
Absolutely.
So what was what for a new LARPer? They come here, they see these costumes, they want to make something. How, if they want to start a conversation about their character and what it looked like, what would you tell them? What would you advise them to, or give them pointers on and how to think so that they can make their dream become a reality?
Build it slowly. That's a thing that so I think that you do need a very basic I mean I won't lie, the sort of hard and fast part of me says don't come to the first two events and save that money so you can spend it on a costume. But I think that building it from the building it from the basics up is always a good idea. If you can get a simple pair of black drawstring pants and a peasant like shirt, if you will, just something loose that doesn't look too modern, and then a pair of boots. I mean, unless there's some very specific reason, for specific shoes, like if you have a health issue that you have to wear certain kind of shoes, if you really just put a little tiny bit of effort into the very basics, you can always build off of that. You can always add things as you go. When I started playing Risa, that I was very basic. I think I added like 14 layers over the 20 some odd years that I played her. And there was always something. I had a skirt and an overskirt that were two different colors, and I had a red shirt and a black bodice and my purple crossbody bag, and a deck of tarot cards. That was literally all I had at the beginning. And like I said, I did a lot of thrift store shopping to make that.
Thrifting is fun. It's a great community activity.
It is very much, and I just built off of that. As the years went by, I added scarves, I added pins and brooches, I added jewelry, necklaces, more scarves, a lot of scarves. So I think just putting that sort of basic effort in, and just having something basic and building off of that. I think that sometimes it's great. Like I'm leaping into fealty with a character that's just going to have all the works because I can, but you can't always do that. And sometimes, like, I loved the way Risa slowly built into Risa, who she was at the end. And so she evolved just like any human being evolves. She started as this, young, naive girl, and became this world, I won't say world weary, but very world understanding woman at the end. Yeah. She was
World weary is
definitely ready to retire.
yeah.
But yeah, so I think sometimes, like, especially when I was younger, it was easy to start a character that is young and fresh faced and, doesn't really have any sort of jaded experiences with the world.
Right.
And now that I'm older, I think I tend to start characters that already have gone through those younger years and is now at a place where they want to be. But that's because I've been creating characters for such a very long time. I think looking at it from a new person perspective, if you first of all create a character that's got some parts of you and some parts that aren't you, that you have to sort of stretch a little bit to do, and just to give you a
Grounding
a place to fall back when you
Yeah.
need to. Yeah. And then a basic costume that you can build off of, because the hope is that you start playing this character and you get to spend years developing the character, building memories of that character, building friendships with other characters. And so the theory is that things will build on top of that. I think be kind to yourself. You know, don't be flat out lazy. That's not, I don't want to say that, but be kind to yourself. Remember that, none of us started with,
brocade and
right. I
dozens of
didn't
yards of
start.
fabric and
I'm a bad example because it's all I do. I love to sew, and I really love to buy fabric. So,
LARPing's
I,
perfect.
yeah, so this is part of what I do. It's like the main part of what I do is just building these costumes. But I started with a thrift store costume and a drawstring skirt. My splurge all those years ago was a $100 bodice from Maresca. Very basic, plain, like their very basic model. It might have been 150, but that
That
was
was
my
the first
splurge. Everything
major
else,
investment, huh?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So, and that was my investment. Everything else was very, very basic, and it couldn't have been more plain. For her culture, it couldn't have been more plain.
I think it's
Um,
great.
you know,
I
and
think that's awesome.
my mom helped me make the skirt for her and the shirt, and that was it. Just sort of took off from there.
That's
So
great. That's awesome. I mean, like, you just don't want to rush it all up front. You just
no,
there's
don't
something
rush.
beautiful in letting it grow, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's that time, so it looks like for the evening, Michelle, I'm gonna have to let you go. Until next
Well,
time. But this has been really great. Thanks for taking the time to come out tonight and sharing your ideas and your inspirations for the game, and helping
oh,
people who don't always get the chance to get to know all of us each individual. I love that we have the chance to sit down and chat about all the things that keep you going and keep us all going too. And thank you so much for doing that.
well, I would just like to part with, if any of our players are still watching, you might not see me as much as you see the other staff members, but just remember that I am here, and at some point I will be really visible quite suddenly, and
I
I
can't wait
hope
to
to
see
see
you
you when I am.
like in camp again. I can't wait. I can't
I'm
wait.
very excited to. I have a very, very slow building thing that is happening, and I'm very excited for everybody to get to experience it, and I hope that they like it. So,
Yeah, so for those of you listening, keep an eye on the Facebook group, because we're going to be doing all kinds of things where we're going to be sneaking up stuff on you. And okay, that's kind of very sinister to say, but a lot of that writing and all these ideas are going to start coming out, and we're going to do a lot of it in our Facebook group. You're going to start seeing it tons and tons more, and you're going to start getting a base of knowledge that's really going to start bringing out the heart of these stories and these characters that me and Michelle was talking about tonight for her, and what we've been chatting about all night. And if you enjoy seeing more of that kind of stuff too, consider giving us a follow. We love talking about these things, and we love talking with our staff members about the kinds of things they're accomplishing at games. And there's still a few more left for us too. I think next week we have Invictus 2's got Mickey, right? And then we still have for Coventry, we have two very, very, very close to our heart staffers, Caitlin and Andy. And I think Amanda as well has not. I don't think we've put Amanda in the hot seat yet, and we want to talk to her about all of her things. And so if you want to continue seeing content like that, consider giving us a follow. Give us a look on Facebook, and hopefully we can talk to you then, and you can get into Michelle's shenanigans with her brilliant ideas over on her Twitch channel again. I'm gonna plug that shamelessly.
next week,
Because
next
I'll
week is
tell you,
Andy.
it's really helpful. It's really stuff that it really brings the barrier of entry down lower, and that's really awesome for us, I would say. So, with that, Michelle.
Well, thank you guys so much. Next week is Andy, it looks like.
Yeah,
So everybody tune in and hear what he has to say, and get to know him a little bit better. And we can't wait to see you.
Good night, guys. Have a good one. Thanks, Michelle.